Hey guys, this is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring, a wrestling recap discussion show of WWE's Monday Night Raw, Tuesday Night SmackDown Live, and all those pay-per-view events, including the most recent network special that we are talking about today, the much talked about Crown Jewel, taking place in some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. It did happen in some sort of a school, university arena, Redea, I think it was the name, taking place in parts unknown as far as WWE was concerned, because they did not say the name of this country. Of course, as we all know, Crown Jewel took place in Saudi Arabia, and of course the reason why WWE, oh man, I said that like a little kid, WWE went out of their way not to mention it is because of the smorgasbord of controversy surrounding the Saudi Arabian government after the kidnapping and murder of that journalist whose name I cannot pronounce. And so, but odds are, if you've paid attention to any sort of news story in the last month, you know what I'm talking about, and you know that this show, since that incident, has been under the microscope of scrutiny, with a lot of people saying that the WWE should not go to this, or should not go ahead with this event because they were afraid it might promote the Saudi Arabian regime, much like the Greatest Royal Rumble did. And we even had some big stars drop out of it. John Cena was originally supposed to be on the show. He said, can't see me, not on this show. Daniel Bryan said no instead of yes to Crown Jewel. So we've had some big changes, and I would imagine that even some of the locker room that were not did not have the fortune of being John Cena or having a little bit of creative control in Daniel Bryan went through with the show. And this was a weird show just because of that just cloud of controversy surrounding it. And it's tricky too, because it's like, on one hand, you know, I get the critics saying that, you know, this is just horror. You know, it's not WWE's fault. This show was going to happen way before that the whole journalist thing happened. It was just horrible timing for all of this. But so it's like, yeah, I get maybe wanting to cancel it to kind of, like, I guess, punish maybe the government, saying like, hey, we're not going to stand for that. We're not going to go. And if that's what you guys are all about. On the other hand, and this is I don't know if anyone ever has expressed this specific point of view, but I was thinking about it before the show, and then definitely watching the show, is that, you know, the people, the fans, the actual just regular citizens, the fans that are just there, you know, they're not responsible for it. They just want to see you wrestling. And I think if I was on the roster and was forced to go to this thing, I would probably keep that in mind of, like, I'm not doing it for the higher ups in the country. I'm doing it for just the average fan, the kid that just wants to see some wrestling, you know, just to give them something fun and entertaining, and just, you know, kind of make their day. So, like, just thinking about it from that angle can make the show cool. And it's always cool when they would show the shots of the little kids in the crowd that don't get to see WWE live really ever, or rarely, kind of like genuinely having a good time. Definitely more enjoyable than seeing the kind of like big higher ups in the front row that most of the time clearly weren't even paying attention, or just like in little huddled in groups just talking amongst themselves or on their phones, and just seemingly could not care less what was going on in the ring. So yeah, just mixed feelings on the show. And this is even before we even get into the show itself. But yeah, that's what we're here to talk about, is how Crown Jewel turned up amidst all of the firestorm around it. Was it at least a good wrestling show? Let's find out. A 1, a 2, a 3. And then crunch, like I bite into the lollipop that says Crown Jewel, and I say 3, and I hand it back to the little kid who's now very distraught. Anyways, that's a reference. Let's just get to it. So right off the bat, the set for Crown Jewel was really cool looking. Very much WrestleMania caliber, really. Nice big set shaped like a crown, I should say, with a big like giant video like wall that's crown shape, and then the big video pillars in the ring. Like it's very WrestleMania like, including the fact that we had pyro. Pyro made its comeback. Again, the only other show outside of WrestleMania. And when I say Pyro made its comeback, I mean Pyro made its comeback. Like, there was a giant Pyro display in the beginning. Damn near every wrestler got Pyro, even the wrestlers that didn't normally get Pyro. Pyro to the great Pyro ban got Pyro. Like, this was like a year's worth of Pyro. Like, all the Pyro that we would have normally gotten if WWE had not taken it away, it was all in this show. It was everywhere. So it looked cool, nothing else. And we open up the show in a big way with one Hulk Hogan, the immortal Hulk Hogan, making his grand return to WWE after being exiled for a few years following his leaked sex tape thing where he said the racist thing and then wound up putting Gawker out of business over a lawsuit. It's a whole thing that good odds are you probably are familiar with. And it's, I don't know why, but it's kind of weird to hear real American play in a different country. I don't know why. It's always struck me as just, I would say odd, but just interesting. But, you know, the real American Hulk Hogan makes his way into Saudi Arabia, or the nondescript Arab country of no specificity. And he just is out there he's the host of the show, but we only see him tonight, or this one promo. Like, he does not show up again. And he just says, "It's great to be out here, brother," in front of the universe. Again, not saying where he's in front of. And talks about, "Oh, let me tell you something, Jack. I'm just so happy to be here. And, oh, brother, it's just the 24-inch pythons, brother, here in this nondescript country. And I'm just so happy to be back." And he keeps it very short and sweet. Like, he's probably out there for, like the promo itself maybe lasts, like, 2 minutes or whatever. I didn't time it, but it was very short. Shorter than I thought it would be, especially for Hulk Hogan. But he's in and out. He poses a lot. And then we get another huge pyro display. They then introduce His Excellency, some important person. I don't know if that's the King of Saudi Arabia. I assume it is, because why would they call him His Excellency? But if so, of course, he is not the most liked person in the world right now, especially in the West. And he was interesting to kind of get a close up on him, because he was like not even smiling. He was just kind of sitting there, just looking, I don't want to say smug, but like just, he almost had this like movie villain look about him, just really kind of cold looking, and just kind of like, I don't know, like you would maybe expect like a wave to the crowd and like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm so happy for this show for everybody." But no, he was just kind of leaning back in his nice like love seat thing that they had around the front rows and just looking somewhat menacing. So that was an interesting little moment. And we get to our first match, which is the first match in the World Cup tournament to determine the best in the world. And it's on the SmackDown side, Rey Mysterio taking on Randy Orton. And throughout all of these World Cup matches, the announcer would introduce all of the wrestlers by listing all of their like stats, like their championship stats. So they'd be like, "Oh, you know, Randy Orton," or like making his way to the ring, multi-time WWE champion, 3-time Intercontinental champion, 2-time United States champion, Grand Slam champion, Royal Rumble winner, blah, 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 blah. Like just going down their whole resume. And they did that for every guy, or every guy that was in the World Cup tournament, which I thought was a nice touch, you know, kind of like to kind of make these guys seem important. Like, hey, these are all the best guys in this one tournament. even if it's not really an international tournament. We got the best guys in it. It's cool to see Ray with his pyro back, where he like points and shoots pyro into the crowd, because that's what the crowd loves, getting fireworks shot at him. He gets a little inset promo saying he's gonna rise to the challenge, and that he came back specifically to win this thing. And yeah, this was a lot of these, you're gonna hear this a lot for a lot of these World Cup matches, but it was a totally decent match, but nothing that jumped out of the page, mainly because it's always tricky when you do these one night tournaments, which are very rare. Like, unless I'm mistaken, is this the first pay-per-view that was just centered around a tournament since WrestleMania 4? I mean, like, and I'm not talking about King of the Ring, because King of the Ring is a tournament, but I mean, like, the entire tournament took place in one night, because even King of the Ring has qualifying brackets, or like, and not even qualifying brackets, but they have like some brackets that take place on Raw and SmackDown, and then it's like the final brackets take place at the pay-per-view, but like the tournament from beginning to end is on the show, which I'm not sure has happened since WrestleMania 4, and I might be overlooking something, but off the top of my head, that's the first show that comes to mind. And when you do that, since you're going to see so many of these guys, or not so many of these guys, but you are going to see some of these guys repeatedly throughout the night, the matches, especially in the early ones, are kind of generally shorter and uneventful, because they have to save their energy for the later matches, which on paper would be bigger because they matter more. So this match went probably maybe 10 minutes, if even. And it was just a fine back and forth match. Just Ray and Orton. Just going back and forth. Orton reversed the 619 to his hanging DDT, which is pretty cool. And then this match gets a surprise finish with Randy going for the RKO and Ray kind of countering into this kind of like backslide roll-up thing that was pretty cool for like a surprise quick win. And yeah, so Ray advances, but he is not happy, because as soon as he gets up, he RKOs the bejesus out of Ray and then proceeds to beat him up. And by that, I mean he throws him to the floor, and then he throws him on top of the announce table. Not through the table, he just kind of like slams him chest first on top of it. And then he pouts as he leaves. And then the big question is, if Ray is going to be able to compete 100% for the remainder of the tournament. So, totally fine opener, but nothing crazy. Miz gets interviewed. He basically says he's going to win this thing and become the best in the world. And that brings us to the next SmackDown match, Miz versus Jeff Hardy. Jeff says in his little inset promo that he needs to win this to defeat his demons. Unfortunately, his demons won because, again, totally fine match, but nothing worth talking about or writing home about. But it ends with Miz countering the Twist of Fate into a skull-crushing finale. And totally average match, but I was pretty disappointed that Miz won, because I was kind of hoping to see Ray versus Jeff in the semifinals, instead of another match between Miz and Ray, which we've seen in recent weeks, twice actually. So I was like, really? I would have gave Jeff the win there, but oh well, what are you gonna do? Next, on the Raw side of the brackets, we've got Seth Rollins taking on Bobby Lashley. Seth says in his little promo, if you notice, all these guys got inset promos, which is always a nice touch. Just saying that he used to be on, when he qualified for this tournament originally, he was on top of the world, but a lot of things have changed. And they certainly have. But he's going to prove that he's the best. This was one of the more interesting matches, just because these two have never faced each other. It was fine for what it was. It needed some, I would have liked to see get a bit more time to get something going, but what they had was good. And I would like to see more from them in the future. This kind of wins, and it's kind of similar matches, or similar manner as the last two qualifying or tournament matches, with Seth rolling through a like countering Lashley's move or whatever, and rolling through into the surprise curb stomp. So it's kind of like all the matches have kind of ended with like surprise counters, and most of them finishers for like a quick win. So that kind of happened here. He just kind of hit the curb stomp out of nowhere. And yeah, that was about it. Surprisingly, Seth didn't get beat up by Lashley or Leo Rush, which you would expect for them, but not in this case. So, the Kingslayer advances. Kurt Angle gets interviewed, and he says he's going to write the next chapter of his career to prove that he's the best. one of the coolest things about having Pyro back was that we got to see Kurt do his classic Pyro again, which is always cool. Even though his little hand wraps with the stars, it still looks like an oven mitten and kind of not threatening. This was always also the quietest "You suck" chant I've ever heard, like ever. Like the crowd was just and the crowd was relatively not like crazy, but not like silent either. Kind of mild throughout the show, and I don't know if that's just a cultural thing. I don't think it's an indication that they were bored. I don't know if that's just how they react. Kind of like how Japanese wrestling fans are pretty quiet, because that's just how they watch sporting events. It's kind of a respectful quiet, not a we're bored quiet, and they only react to very selective things like loudly. I don't know if that's the same for Saudi Arabia to a lesser extent, or there was just a lot of people there that were just like, we don't care. Maybe one or the other. But the "You Suck" chant, it was weird to hear how quiet it was. It was maybe like a third of the crowd chanting "You suck." Let's see. Dolph in his little promo says no one knows how it feels to be the best except for him. I disagree, Dolph, but it's okay. And this was easily the most interesting match because Dolph versus Kurt is probably a mild dream match. Two very good amateur wrestlers. This was fine for a Kurt Angle match in 2018. He did his usual stuff. He was popping those hips, those belly to bellies and German suplexes. Dolph was selling for him, as Dolph Ziggler can sell the only way he knows how, flopping around. I was really hoping for Kurt to win, even though, yes, I get that Kurt should probably put over Dolph, but on one hand, I don't really care about Dolph Ziggler, so I was like, I'd rather see Kurt advance in this thing. He's maybe the most interesting person in it, just the story of like, I would have liked to see the story of how far Kurt Angle could go. But unfortunately, he does not go long because he misses a charge into the corner, and then Dolph hits him with a surprise zigzag for the win. And man, we were this close to getting Seth Rollins versus Kurt Angle for the first time ever. And then Dolph Ziggler had to take it away from us. So I was pretty disappointed to see this. And I'm not surprised to see Kurt lose immediately, but man, I just really was hoping that they would pull the trigger on a Seth versus Kurt match. So pretty much this tournament, as the winners were being decided, got, for me at least, less and less interesting. So we've got especially because when you look at the semifinals at this point, you've got on Raw, Seth Rollins versus Dolph Ziggler, which has been done to death. Yes, they work well together and the matches are always good, but we've seen it so many times at this point. So it's like, really? We're going to do it again? And then on the SmackDown side, you've got Rey Mysterio versus Miz, which as I've already said, we literally saw those two wrestle in 2 weeks in a row prior to this, both in singles match and in tag match, with Rey coming out on top. So I was like, man, this tournament is already kind of a waste of time. But could you at least maybe make it interesting? Like imagine if on the Raw we got Seth Rollins versus Kurt Angle, first time ever, and then on SmackDown we got Rey Mysterio versus Jeff Hardy, which is not a match that's happened very often. I mean, yes, they're all four of them are baby faces, but damn it. Both of those matches are infinitely more interesting and would have helped, at least for me personally, retain my interest in this tournament. But by the point that the semifinals were decided, I was more or less checked out on this tournament. I was like, all right, well, I guess that's it for this in terms of interest. So just feels like a big missed opportunity in my eyes. So anyways, moving on. We had a SmackDown Tag Team title match. The Bar, along with their new buddy, The Big Show, defending those blue belts against the New Day. And again, I know I'm beating this dead horse, but when Big E does his entrance, like, oh, he doesn't say, oh, Saudi Arabia, he just says, oh, Crown Jewel. And it just got funnier in a kind of a sad way as it went on. I was like, did they really expect us to forget where this is taking place? I mean, I know probably the answer is no, but they're also not going to go out of their way to remind us. But I don't know, it just got more and more humorous throughout the night of like, hey, nondescript Arab nation. So, what was cool was that New Day comes out on an elevated platform that rises several feet above the floor, and it's modeled after a flying carpet, so they're pretty much flying in on a carpet, which was pretty cool looking, even though when they were lowering it, it was kind of shaky and probably semi-terrifying. But the New Day had to keep dancing on top of it, and I was like, I wonder if there's like a nervous dance, like, woohoo, please don't crash and kill us all, woohoo, it's a New Day, yes it is. This match was, again, fine, but nothing remarkable and nothing that these four haven't really done. The only real spot that stood out was at one point Big E had Sheamus on top of his shoulders, and Kofi jumps like he's gonna deliver like a doomsday device, but instead jumps over Sheamus and delivers a top rope stomp. So like a leapfrog stomp, which is pretty impressive because he has to jump over the combined height of Big E and Sheamus to deliver this stomp on top of Sheamus's like the back of his neck, and that was pretty cool. But this match ends with the New Day losing after Sheamus shoves Big E into Big Show's punch, who hits him without the ref looking, and then that allows Sheamus to hit the bro kick for the win. Totally nothing match, but just another way to get another title match on the show, so fine. Miz gets interviewed again, and his throat is noticeably more hoarse, apparently after he took a mule kick to the throat from Jeff during his match, which I didn't realize it hit him like that when I saw it. So, ouch. It almost reminded me of Rob Van Dam injuring Triple H's trachea in the first ever Elimination Chamber back in Survivor Series 2002 when he came off the top of the pod with his 5-star frog splash, but he hit knees to throat on Triple H and damn near pretty much crushed his windpipe. Something like that, though not quite severe, but yep, Miz had to deal with that, so... This leads us to our first semifinal match, The Miz taking on Rey Mysterio. Of course, the story is that Rey is not 100%. Miz goes right after Rey's injured ribs, and that's kind of the story for this match. We get a mild CM Punk chant, which I was like, really? Like, here? Like, that's traveled over here, of all places? I mean, the match wasn't anything crazy, but that was weird to hear, even if it was like a third of the crowd again chanting it. Rey kicks out of the skull-crushing finale, and in a kind of nice touch of continuity, he tries to hit the same pinning combination that he used to hit Orton, albeit slightly botched, but I like that he tried to, you know, stick with what worked, but it does not work here. Miz kicks out. And then Miz gets the win after Rey goes for his top rope splash and just eats knees, and then Miz just rolls him up. So, yep, once again, sound like broken record, respectable match, but nothing special. Seth gets interviewed again, and he says, hey, this wasn't meant to be easy, but he does his best work when the odds are against him. Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins is next for their 27th match. Drew McIntyre is here too. He's been out here for all of Dolph's matches, as you would expect. I just haven't mentioned it. But this is this is easily the best match of this whole tournament because these two work well together. It was hard for me to get super into because we've seen it so many times. But it was still just a good, solid back and forth technical match. Some decent false finishes. Drew kind of sticking his nose into things, so Seth's kind of having to deal with him. And the whole time I'm just like rooting for Seth. But in a very surprising finish, Seth goes up top to hit a frog splash, which is, now to think about it, it's kind of weird that both semifinal matches ended with the face screwing up a frog splash. But he goes for his frog splash. Drew, when the ref is not looking, shoves him off the top, sending Seth crashing to the mat. And that allows Dolph to get the pin on him. Or he super kicks him and then he gets the pin. So we have a heel versus heel finals for this tournament. Miz versus Dolph, which is not the most exciting matchup in the world, especially with both of them as heels. Obviously, there's a ton of history between the two, but I was very, very surprised and very deflated. I was like, man, you could at least give me Seth versus Miz, because I like Seth a lot. Now, at least the idea of him winning this. And I was thinking, like, maybe Ambrose will cost him the match and like Miz get the tournament win or something, but Miz versus Dolph, like, I like Miz, and I was definitely pulling for Miz throughout between the two, but I don't know, just having two heels face each other, I was like, oh, that's not very palatable. I guess. So I'm not sure what. It's weird thinking there, just weird thinking. So I don't know. Anyways, Byron Saxton interviews Dolph as he's walking up the ramp, saying that his win was probably an upset, and then Dolph kind of goes off into his Dolph Ziggler rant, saying that no one's ever believed in him, but he knew he would win, and he's gonna win a trophy tonight because he's that damn good, and all that stuff. As Drew McIntyre looks on in the background, I just look at him and go, "Why aren't you in this tournament? You're so much better." Speaking of things that are better, AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. That's a match that's better. They're facing off again for the fourth time? Fifth? I don't know. Started to lose count. Of course, this match was made completely out of the blue because Daniel Bryan not being cool with coming to Saudi Arabia. So this match was made on the past SmackDown. This is for the WWE Championship, the latest chapter. They renewed their rivalry, as WWE likes to say. The crowd was easily the most jazzed for this match, at least at this point in the show. Like, they were reacting to everything pretty much from beginning to end with some dueling chants and just were pretty loud, which was definitely breathed some life into the show. This was another just good Joe versus Styles match. Just good back and forth. It was a little hard to get into because I really didn't buy Samoa Joe taking the title here. I said that on SmackDown that I predicted AJ would retain because I fully expect Randy Orton to be the next real challenger to AJ. And then Joe was pretty much just a last minute replacement anyway. AJ spent the match going after Joe's injured knee, which makes sense because that's how he beat him in Australia. They were trading submissions for a while. And then, kind of in a somewhat abrupt finish, AJ just kind of hits the phenomenal forearm and gets the win. So the match just, at least to me, it just felt like it just kind of ended. Like they were like, "Oh, you guys are out of time. Take it home." But I was kind of surprised the way it ended. But I mean, not that AJ won, just in the pacing, it just felt weird that it ended when it did. But yeah, AJ Styles wins. Not surprising at all. Just another good match between these two, and that's about all there is to it. Now, here's where things get interesting, and I say that in air quotes. We got our Universal Championship match, Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar. Of course, this was originally a triple threat match with Roman Reigns defending the title against the other two, but due to Roman's illness, he had to relinquish the title. So now we have a one-on-one match with a guaranteed new Universal Champion. And I was looking forward to this match just because this seemed like if there was ever a time to put the title on Braun, this was it. And Baron Corbin comes out first to kind of, I guess, observe the proceedings and present the winner with the Universal title, which was on a pedestal outside the ring. So he comes out first, and he's in the ring for the big introductions. Brock and Braun come out. They're do the big intros. They're facing each other off, and then the ref holds up the title to signify the start of the match, and then gives it to Corbin to leave. And as Corbin is walking away with the belt, he spins back around and he nails Braun in the back of the head with the title before the bell rings. And then he orders the ref to immediately start the match. Brock seems slightly surprised, but also is like, whatever. And immediately hits an F5 for a very close to, and I almost had a heart attack. I was like, no, they wouldn't. But things did not get better because Braun, who is now completely out of it, takes 2 more F5s for 3 total, but kicks out of all of them, which certainly makes Braun look like a monster. Brock gets frustrated and then picks him up for a 4th F5, though this time he just dumps Strowman to the floor. So just an F5 straight from the ring to the floor, and tries to get a countout victory. That does not work either. And this whole time, Braun has done nothing. Like, he is just getting decimated, basically, by Brock, who is just running a train of F5s on him. The only form of offense that Braun gets in this match is when Braun's in the corner. Lesnar tries to charge into him, but he gets a boot up. And then, as Lesnar is slightly staggered, Braun tries to run at him. And then all he runs into is a fifth F5 to give Lesnar the goddamn Universal Championship back. So we're right back where we started before SummerSlam, because a year and a half of barely having a Universal Champion around wasn't enough. We're just going to go right back to that. And man, this is about the point that I checked out of this show mentally. Like, I was already pretty done after the finals of the World Cup were set. And then this was like, come on, like the one thing I was really looking forward to of like a big thing that could happen. It's like, you're gonna give it back to Brock? Like, I'm still like, it really has not been long since Brock was champion. Like, we had that brief reprieve of having a world champion every week. And, you know, unfortunately Roman went down with his sickness, but that was just back in late August. It's what, early November? Like, that's not a long time. So we're right back where we were. Braun is kind of just out of it. And Corbin is very happy with himself as he makes his way to the back. And I was sitting in my chair, just kind of mouth somewhat agape with my arms up, just like, I can't believe we're just right back where we were. So yeah, not happy about this at all. God damn it. When do you put the belt on Strowman? There's only so many times he can come up short in these title matches where you just stop believing in him and he just becomes a choke artist. Like, he has slipped on so many banana peels at this point that it gets harder to buy that he's going to do it. And they're running the risk of doing it too late when he's still popular, but I'm like getting frustrated all over again talking about it. Like, that's how my mind just exploded, just in complete disarray and just being baffled at this. It's like, oh my god, like, what is happening right now? So I'm just gonna move on before I just have an aneurysm thinking about this decision again. Anyways, and this probably is gonna help because we're about to go into another aneurysm-inducing decision. So we get the the World Cup finals to determine the best in the world. The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler. Two heels. Hard to choose who to go for. I go for Miz because Miz is infinitely more entertaining than Dolph Ziggler is, at least for me. Even though Dolph is the better wrestler. Immediately, Drew McIntyre gets sent to the back by the ref, which is actually pretty smart because the ref isn't an idiot and it's like, hey, I know your shit. This finals are too important. You need to go. Shane McMahon also comes out for this match because if you remember on SmackDown, he issued the ultimatum that whoever the SmackDown competitor was that made it to the finals, if they lost this tournament, they would be fired from SmackDown. So I guess he's out there to personally drop the guillotine himself, so to speak, should Miz lose, because as Ned Stark once said, the man who makes the sentence should swing the sword. So it's good to see that Shane is a follower of the Stark philosophy. So let's just get through this. So Drew gets into the back. Miz is pretty happy about this. Dolph's freaking out. And immediately, Miz jumps Dolph before the bell starts as Dolph has his back turned and just starts stomping on him and just kind of getting the advantage. Gets Dolph out of the ring and the two of them. But as Miz exits the ring, like he climbs over and drops to the floor to go after Dolph, he twists his ankle. Not for real, as you'll soon see, but he twists his ankle. And he's on the floor hobbling. And him and Dolph are just kind of going at it. And Miz is trying to stand, but he is clearly not able to stand. He's limping like a son of a bitch. And then eventually the refs kind of has to go to him. And keep in mind that the bell has not rung yet. So this is not a match yet. And the ref is going over to Miz, checking to see if he can go. Miz is insisting he can go, but he can't even stand. And the ref, you can hear the ref keeps saying, like, I don't know, I think this is going to have to be a forfeit. And Miz is freaking out, saying he's never been injured and that he can do this. Shane is over there, too, talking to Miz, trying to coach him on and trying to see if he can go. And Miz is telling Shane that, no, don't call the match, I can do it. I've never been hurt. But the ref is not having it, and he orders the announcer to announce Dolph is the winner by forfeit. Shane McMahon goes over to the announcer and is like, not this way, no, we're not doing this, even cutting off the announcer's announcement mid speech, like grabbing his mic and saying, no, we can figure something out, like it can't end like this. But the ref and the announcer are like, well, what the hell else can you do? He can't go, and there's no one else. And then Shane says that I'll replace Miz. I will be the SmackDown representative in the World Cup finals to determine the best in the world. And somehow that flies, which is ridiculous for several reasons. Corbin, who is also out there, is freaking out at this, saying that's horse crap, as is Dolph, as they should be. Michael Cole is freaking out, saying that this is horse crap. Corey Graves is kind of in between. You know, he's on both shows, so he really has no dog in this race. But yeah, this just flies. Like, they're like, he says that, yeah, I'll do it, and then he gets announced as the new replacement for Miz, and that is our next match. We got Dolph taking on Shane McMahon for this trophy to determine the best in the world. Not really, but basically, yes, the best in the world. And everyone is okay. Well, not everyone is okay with this, but somehow this is allowed to happen. Even though Baron Corbin, who, I mean, he has some power. I mean, I guess Shane has higher power, like his dad. I guess he has higher power because he's the commissioner and Corbin is just the general manager. So, but like, how does that happen? This is very much like, this is somehow sillier than in NXT when the Undisputed Era, did I call him Error? The Undisputed Era won the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic without ever actually being in a tournament, because they won the finals by being inserted into the finals. And then they won. So they won a multi-week tournament just by competing in the finals and being inserted into it last minute, and now they are the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic winners. This is very much that, again, of like, what? But stupider, actually, because at least the Undisputed Era are regular wrestlers. So Shane takes his shirt off, is in his wife beater, so he's kind of looking like an older, buffer Dean Ambrose prior to Dean's new incarnation. And he immediately jumps Dolph at the bell with his patented Shane O'Mac punches, which are not very good. But, of course, Dolph is selling them like he's being shot by a machine gun. He's just all over Dolph here. And I guess the idea is that I guess they kind of protect themselves because, you know, anytime you watch a Shane McMahon match, especially if it's not a hardcore rules match, you really have to suspend your disbelief more than you already do, because you're like, this 40-something-year-old guy who wrestles maybe once or twice a year is taking on a regular competitor, in that case Dolph Ziggler, who's an elite athlete, and is not only hanging with him, but dominating. And I guess the kind of saving their ass portion of this is like, well, Dolph has already competed multiple times tonight, so he's not 100%, he's tired. It's like, yeah, but it's still Shane McMahon. Like, why isn't Dolph just super kicked him already? But yeah, Shane is just beating the crap out of Dolph. Dolph gets the zigzag. Shane kicks out of it because why not? I feel like I'm mentally unraveling as I'm talking about this. But yeah, Shane just kicks out of the zigzag because if he can put himself in the finals of this tournament, he can kick out of that finisher like no one's business. And then Shane hits the coast-to-coast sans garbage can, just straight Air Force Ones, Nikes, whatever he wears, into Dolph's face. And Shane wins. Shane wins this tournament. Shane is the best in the world. And so we've wasted all of our time hyping up and watching matches to qualify for this BS tournament. And it's like, okay, like, this tournament was stupid from the start, but if you're gonna give it to us, at least give us a real winner and like make the matches interesting. But as the brackets kept going, it's like, oh man, we couldn't get these cool dream matches or setups. Like, oh, we couldn't get Seth versus Kurt or anything like that, and we wound up with two heels in the finals, and then one of them couldn't go, and then Shane McMahon of all people replaces them, and he wins the cup. And the only thing I can think of is like, I mean, obviously, at least it seems to me that this is setting up Survivor Series. you know, the big Raw versus SmackDown. You know, it's the only time of year that Raw and SmackDown competitors compete in head-to-head competition. I don't know if you're aware of that. Not counting tonight, of course, when that happened, but the only other time of year. This is clearly to set that up. It's a very stupid way to set it up, but it's a way to set it up. So I get that, but just and it seems, I would imagine that Shane is a heel, or at least because he wins this thing and he celebrates like he was in the tournament from the beginning. Like he beat multiple people. Like he is doing multiple victory laps around the ring, high-fiving the fans, and he is having an overblown celebration. Like he grabs the cup, he is waving that thing around. He is like, woo, woo, I did it, SmackDown Live, we're the best, woo. He is kissing that trophy. Like he is having an over-the-top heel celebration with this thing as Michael Cole and Renee Young are just like, how the hell is that even allowed? Like, they're completely ripping on Shane here, saying that this is ridiculous, which it is, and that Dolph got screwed, and just all of these things. I was like, he's got to be a heel, right? I mean, come on, that celebration would say that. But yeah, I don't know if I have any more words for this other than this is dumb. And it literally, like, if the Brock thing blew my mind, this literally, like, I was like silent, just like totally just eyes like, why? Just like, what even is life right now? Like, what is happening? So yeah, Shane McMahon is the best in the world. Not really. Also, I'm curious. When Shane was teasing that we're going to replace Miz with someone else, how many people thought, even for just a tiny fraction of a second, thought that it might be CM Punk? Because I feel like that's the crowd. I thought in my mind, I was like, what if it, like, I didn't think it was going to be Punk, but I was thinking, like, I have a feeling that people are thinking this is CM Punk right now because of the setup. And even though that would make no sense whatsoever in terms of, like, logic of, like, so he re-signed CM Punk, like, let's just say kayfabe, like, he re-signed Punk, flew him to Saudi Arabia, just on the off chance that one of his SmackDown guys were not going to be able to compete, and also that he would even be allowed to replace someone with another competitor, even though that just isn't how tournaments work. Like, you can't do that at all. But let's just say that he was allowed to do that. Like, he prepared all of that just on the, like, just the most circumstantial plan of all time. But hey, if CM Punk came out, it would get a giant pop and nobody would give a shit about logic. But no, of course, Punk didn't come out because that's ridiculous. But I was just thinking that in my mind. So yeah, Shane, he has a trophy. He's the best in the world. Survivor Series, here we come. There you go. Our main event. After those last two matches left me completely just mentally just exhausted. We've got D-Generation X taking on the Brothers of Destruction. AKA the old guys are back in town. Main eventing another big show. Somehow, until now, like until the match, like last minute, Shawn Michaels coming back for his first match in 8.5 years was a complete afterthought that was not even really mentioned until the match happened, which continued to blow my mind the closer we got to it. Like, that's easily the biggest story of this match is, hey, Shawn Michaels is back in the ring. Who would have ever thought that? But no, they were freaking out more about, like, or all the promotion has been like, man, who would have thought DX would be back together? It's like, Shawn is wrestling. He was retired. That's a big deal. Not that DX is back together, but Shawn specifically is back in the ring. Holy crap. And only until now, when they were showing the build-up package for DX, was that, like, finally getting the mention that it deserved. So that was one of the problems with this whole story. But yeah, DX comes out. Shawn looks good, even though he's bald, and it just is just a visual I don't think I will ever get used to. Just seeing him in his old gear. I mean, not his old gear. He had some new tights. Or not new tights, but some new chaps. But, you know, his old gear. Like the same chaps he always wore, just a new design. So, new old chaps. Which also, I don't know if anyone noticed, but his attire had the NXT logo on it. Normally where the HBK would be. This is me showing my nerdness that I know specifically how attires of wrestlers are, but yeah, Shawn's chaps were it had NXT logos on it, which I thought was an interesting little touch. What does he wear those when he trains the NXT guys? Probably not, but just interesting little touch. But yeah, the crowd was super jazzed for this, if nothing else. This is easily probably the match that they were the most vocal for. There was a long stall before we started with Kane and Triple H going at it. And yeah, when Shawn came in, the crowd erupted, as they should, because that's the biggest thing in this match. That I'm not going to get into that again. But yeah, Shawn comes in, and Shawn, it's hard to say how he was good. It's hard to say because it's a tag match, so it's not just him by himself. Though there was a stretch where he was in there by himself for a while. But he, given his age and how long he's been away, he looked good. He wasn't the Shawn Michaels of 2002. It wasn't that kind of like mind-blowing return, and he wasn't even the Shawn Michaels of 2010 when he retired. But for the circumstances, Shawn looked really good here, and everyone looked fine. I mean, this was probably as good as it was going to get, given the kind of the age and where all four of these guys are at in their careers. But it was just a fun, chaotic match. Everyone's beating up everybody. Triple H got chokeslammed to the announce table, without moving the monitors. So, like, he straight up crushed one monitor. And then Triple H, took a nap for a while, as Shawn was left by himself against Kane and Undertaker, which I thought was really smart, because one of Shawn's greatest strengths has always been fighting from underneath, and he's always been super good at timing his comebacks. So I was like, okay, this is kind of the chance for Shawn to show that off one more time. And he certainly did. And that's when the match got the most interesting, was seeing Shawn trying to overcome these two guys. And then the story of that story being told was cool. There was a very funny part in the match where Shawn and Kane are fighting, and they're on the top rope with like Kane trying to do maybe a superplex or something, and Shawn battling him, like punching him off. And he somehow manages to punch Kane's mask completely off and sending the mask to the floor. Like, he straight up hits him and the mask just slides right off to the floor. So he unmasked Kane to reveal the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Who would have thought all this time that's who Kane was actually the mayor? I mean, it makes sense. I never saw those two in the same room together. So, mystery solved. But yeah, Kane was unmasked on the show, and unfortunately, it's funny to think that if that spot had happened 20 years ago, that would be a far bigger deal. But yeah, Kane has to go down to the floor, try to retrieve his mask. He does not get a chance to put it on before Shawn hits a mind-blowing top rope moonsault all the way to the floor on top of Undertaker and Kane, or the mayor of Knox County at this point, because he still has not put his mask back on. And yeah, crowd reacted big for that. I reacted big for that. It was Shawn getting to show off one more time. He even hit like a cute little kind of like, what the hell thing. Again, to really show my nerd thing, that was very reminiscent of the SummerSlam 2002 match when he hit the splash from the floor to the table. When he put Triple H to the table, he kind of like what the hell? He kind of resurrected that for this spot, which I thought was a nice little touch there. But yeah, Triple H eventually gets back in. All four are going at it. This more or less becomes a tornado tag by the end, because the ref is being very lenient, we'll say, with these tags. And it got almost a little tricky to remember who the legal man was. But this ends in a somewhat surprising way with the brothers setting up double tombstones for DX. And then Shawn in a cool little counter or whatever, as like they have both of them over their shoulders, but Shawn manages to rake Kane's eyes, because Shawn is going to get tombstoned by Taker, and then of course Kane is going to tombstone Triple H. But Shawn reaches over to rake Kane's eyes, which allows Triple H to escape, and then Triple H can beat up Undertaker to release Shawn. Taker gets taken out. Kane takes not one but two Sweet Chin musics, and then gets caught in the pedigree for the 1, 2, 3. So DX, once again, gets one over on the Brothers of Destruction. I actually thought Kane and Taker would win this, because 50-50 reasons, really. Like, because neither team needs a win, because they're, doesn't do anything for either guy. So I thought, like, Triple H and DX came out on top of Australia. Maybe it'll give Taker and Kane the win here. But no, DX won once again. And like I said, this match was probably as good as it was going to get. It was entertaining. It moved in slow motion at points, but I had fun with it. As much as I was torn on seeing Shawn come back for this, and I still kind of am, he looked fine. And if nothing else, now that Shawn has kind of popped that cherry of I'm gonna break my retirement, can we just get him and AJ Styles now? Is there really any real reason to not have that match? I mean, Shawn maybe doesn't want to do one more, maybe he feels he only had one more left, but my God, now that Shawn has broken that glass ceiling, you gotta do AJ. If you're gonna wrestle anyone on the main roster that's new or that he hasn't faced, AJ Styles, WrestleMania 35, perhaps. Just saying. Plus, it would give him time to grow some of that hair back. Which I amuse myself at how petty I am with the bald head thing, but man, I just never got used to that. It was like seeing a penis wearing chaps doing super kicks. It just, bald Shawn Michaels. Don't like it. So, if his next match is WrestleMania, Shawn, I mean, I'm not telling you how to live your life, but it'd be really cool if you grew your hair back. Kind of like Undertaker did after his terrible bald phase. So, at least a little bit, even if it's the short-haired Shawn that we had before he shaved it all out. I prefer that than straight up bald penis head Shawn. So, but yeah, give us HBK versus AJ now that he's back and he has no qualms about wrestling again, even if it's for one-off things. Just do it. Just do it. And yeah, that wraps up Crown Jewel. Much like every other network special that's overseas, just kind of there. Though, I mean, I guess this one had a bit more storyline implication. We got the Shane McMahon BS for Survivor Series. We got Brock Lesnar as champion for reasons that I don't want to comprehend. And then DX, and where does Shawn go from here? Does he head back into retirement for good, or is this the beginning of a Undertaker-like, I'll wrestle every now and then for special stuff kind of run for Shawn? So, all I can say is it worth watching? Not necessarily. Especially if you enjoy not having headaches about certain things. Like I said, the Universal title and the World Cup finals are kind of head banging on wall inducing. But it was what it was. I'm just glad that Crown Jewel is over. We never have to talk about it again, or at least think about it again in terms of having that to look forward to. We don't have to hear about things being the best in the world. The only time I want to ever hear that again is if CM Punk makes a return. But other than that, I mean, we are going to hear it because Shane McMahon's probably going to brag his ass off about it until Survivor Series. But other than that, we don't have to hear that again. We don't have to talk about Saudi Arabia again, at least until the next time they go, which will be next year at some point. And yeah, that wraps up this very controversial show, both before and during the show. So I'll be interested to see, because I've not looked up any sort of like reception to this show, but I'm looking forward to see how people took to the things that I had issue with, at least. So that'll be fun. But thanks for listening, guys. As always, if you want to follow me and ask me anything about wrestling, or it's just chat, you can do so on Twitter. I'm at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. You can also find this show on other platforms such as YouTube, iTunes, and Podbean. Search for Marcus Writes About Games, which is also where you can find my other podcast, Carving Gaming Rushmores, my list/debate show centered around a specific video game topic with me and 2 rotating guests. Our previous episode, we were debating the best voice performances in video games, which was a really fun episode. If you want to read any written work of mine, you can find my personal website, marcuswritesaboutgames.wordpress.com, where I post all my written work for various outlets, such as gaminghistoria.com, where you can find news stories and reviews I've written over there. If you want to hear me in a role-playing sense, if you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan, I appear as a cast member on 2 Dungeons & Dragons podcasts. The first is We Wanted Adventurers, where I play a very stupid and silly bard. And the second is called Dragon Guard, where I play a gruff, almost Hulk Hogan-like Ranger Tabaxi, which is a cat man for layman's terms. And it's both of them are very silly and improv heavy, and they're both a blast to listen to. And you can find both of those shows on either extralife.com or SoundCloud or Libsyn. Just search once again for either We Wanted Adventurers or Dragon Guard. So, until next time, guys, you will see me with a review of Monday Night Raw. So until then, thanks for listening. Adios.